Good day. I'm very excited and honored to be speaking to you today. And I'm very sorry that circumstances have prevented me from coming to this wonderful conference in person. The good news is that today's technology makes it possible to reach out from far away so that we can share experiences, insights, and expertise across the globe. What this means is that today I'll be able to share with you some of the experiences that we have had in the United States as we've sought to end an epidemic that has resulted in more than 1/4 of all high school students failing to obtain a high school diploma until just recently. Today, more than 35 million American adults don't have a high school diploma, and we know from the research surrounding this issue that those individuals are more likely to be jobless and even homeless. They are more likely to be dependent on governmental assistance. They are more likely to be incarcerated. Altogether, the average American without a diploma will cost our society tens of thousands of dollars over the course of their lifetime, while the average diploma holder will deliver a net benefit of hundreds of thousands of dollars during their working years. This is not a new problem in the United States, and indeed, it's a problem that we've been working to address for a very long time. In 1986, the National Dropout Prevention Center was founded to become a resource for sharing solutions that would end this epidemic. And starting in the 1990s, it began to promote a list of best practices that educators and educational officials could follow if they wanted to do something about the dropout problem. It wasn't until the early 2000s, though, that the issue really began to be thought of nationally as an epidemic. For a long time, even educators generally assumed that a certain number of dropouts was acceptable to fill low-skills labor jobs. Economically thinking, that might still be true to some limited extent, but we also know that the number of low-skills jobs in the United States is much lower than the number of dropouts. Many of us have also come to accept that we have a moral, ethical, and social obligation to give every student as many opportunities as possible to earn a high school diploma. This change in attitude has been the foundation upon which the United States is building one of the greatest success stories in its history of public education. 3.1 million American school children graduated from high school last year, and nearly 80% did so on time, meaning they earned their diploma within 4 years of entering secondary school. That's the highest graduation rate our nation has seen since 1976. Of course, there's still a lot of work to be done. These numbers do not represent a victory in any sense, but rather serve as a waypoint along a very long journey. But we have had enough success in recent years, and there has been enough research completed, that we can feel very confident that the strategies we have enacted are working. And while social, cultural, and educational differences abound, I'm encouraged to see that educators from around the globe who have put these strategies into practice are seeing positive results. Nonetheless, the strategies I'm talking about today are not prescriptive. I can't promise that any one or any combination of these strategies will always work to prevent dropouts and get more students to graduation day in every educational situation. But what I can do is offer a broad look at what the United States has done, piece by piece and little by little, to improve the number of students graduating from its high schools. And I hope you'll accept my offer to be a resource to you as you work to develop the strategies that will best serve the students in your countries and in your communities. The National Dropout Prevention Center has identified 15 strategies that have been demonstrated to have a positive impact on dropout prevention. Today, I'll be talking about just 4 of those strategies and offering some examples as to how they've been successfully implemented in schools across the United States. I'll also be talking about how dropout recovery programs are being implemented to help students reach their academic goals. We'll start today with a discussion of systemic renewal. What this means at a very basic level is that no school is perfect, and everyone can benefit from a continual process in which we examine the way we're teaching our students and meeting their basic needs so that they can focus on their education. This is not change for the sake of change. If programs and practices we have in place are working, we shouldn't change that. But we should always strive to measure the effectiveness of our strategies by using research-driven appraisals to identify what is working and to change the things we do that are not working. One of the ways this has been accomplished in the United States is through the use of teaching coaches. These are individuals who are usually expert teachers and who are responsible for keeping updated with research and best practices. Like a sports coach, they meet regularly with teachers to help them identify ways in which they can improve their teaching. This is not done in any sort of punitive manner, but rather with a spirit of cooperation and collaboration to improve teaching and, specifically, to improve the areas of teaching we know have an impact on dropout prevention. One of the things that systemic renewal processes are revealing in the United States is that there often has been a dismal lack of partnership between schools and the communities in which they exist. The principle of school-community collaboration suggests that everyone in a community is accountable for the quality of education in the school. Not just teachers and administrators, but parents, religious leaders, community agencies, businesses, libraries, and civic leaders. When I'm asked to evaluate how a school is doing to support its students, I often take a walk around that community that immediately surrounds the school, and I ask people I meet if they've recently visited the school for any reason. If I hear that they haven't, that's a good sign that the school is in trouble in some way, because its leaders aren't taking advantage of their nearest resources. Communities offer support, mentoring, and vocational opportunities that can help students better see the value of education. And the definition of community is, of course, expanding. Today, the community that surrounds a school is still physical, but it might also be digital, including the friends and family members of teachers and students and administrators, all linked together through social networks such as LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Right now, I'm engaged in a project in which we are developing social media support groups for at-risk students all across the United States, and I'd be happy and excited to come back in the future to report to you how that is going. Like most of the interventions in the National Dropout Prevention Center list, school-community collaboration is often thought of in the context of secondary schools. But if we really want to make an impactful change on the dropout rate moving forward, we need even more focus on early childhood education. Because the hard truth is that by high school, many at-risk students are years behind their peers in educational attainment, and that effectively restricts their ranges of positive educational outcomes. So while high school level interventions remain important, they're not generally as effective, at least not in the long term, as educational initiatives targeted at students at the earliest ages. In the United States, research shows a single dollar invested in early childhood education programs provides a 7-fold return in costs associated with preventing negative outcomes, such as incarceration, truancy, school dropouts, and teen pregnancy. High-risk students who received early childhood educational interventions earn significantly higher test scores. They attain significantly more years of total education, and they are at a significantly reduced risk for teen pregnancy and drug use. That's not to say that we can simply put all of our focus on young children and forget about programs targeted for older ones. To do so would be to abandon the millions of students who could graduate if given just a little bit more help and support. And that's not to mention the tens of millions who have dropped out already and could, with the right interventions, return to school and be successful. Now, when it comes to older students, one of the best investments that can be made, and one that I know is of particular interest to the members of this conference, is career and technology education. This is the term that is being used now to describe what was once commonly known as vocational education. No matter what we call it though, what we're talking about is providing students who may not otherwise be interested in university studies a continuing clear vision of the relevance of secondary education in their lives by offering career guidance, work-based learning, career pathways, and technical training. The benefits of these types of educational programs are research-based and significant. In the United States, about 94% of students take at least one vocational course, but for more than 7.5 million students, it is a significant part of their studies. That's good news because students who focus on vocational programs graduate at a significantly higher rate than the national average, and 70% move on to some degree of post-secondary education. Now, perhaps not surprisingly, those who complete vocational courses during high school are more likely to find employment once they graduate, regardless of whether they complete any further education. There is another group of students who can benefit from vocational training programs, and they are perhaps the most frequently forgotten when it comes to efforts to end the dropout epidemic. I'm talking now about students who can be served through dropout recovery programs. These are students who have dropped out already, but who could potentially return to school and be successful if they were given the right combination of academic and social support to do so. Unfortunately, this group was initially left out of the National Dropout Prevention Center's list of 15 strategies for ending the dropout epidemic, and they've continued to be forgotten or sidelined, even in the midst of recent resurgences in interest in ending the dropout epidemic. Now, it is true that the United States has seen a great deal of success in recent years in helping lower dropout rates and improve graduation rates, and I do expect that trend to continue. But it is also important to note that even by the most wildly optimistic projections, the United States is expected to only be graduating 90% of its high school students by 2020, and there are plenty of indicators that suggest we're going to fall far short of that mark. In other words, the very best we can expect is a world in which 1 in every 10 children will continue to be subjected to an educational situation that will leave them at a significant economic, social, and civil disadvantage for the rest of their lives. If we knew of a disease that was having this effect on 1 in 10 children, we would spare no expense to find a cure. But so far, investments and programs targeted at this remaining piece of the puzzle have been relatively minimal. That's in large part because we've long considered the act of dropping out to be a decision based on laziness or poor behavior or an inability to academically succeed. None of that is true. In fact, it couldn't be further from the truth. What the research is now demonstrating is that most students don't drop out for any of these reasons. Instead, it is usually a combination of factors that forces them into a situation in which school is a lower priority in their lives. In particular, one key group of dropouts who have been identified as a target group for recovery are teenage mothers. Because they often can't manage to balance school with their obligations as parents, particularly when it comes to managing the expense of childcare, they drop out. But in the long term, that decision leaves them less able to care for their children and more likely to raise a child that will someday also fail to graduate from high school. In one program with which I work very closely, online learning, along with academic coaching and personal mentorship, is helping hundreds of young mothers across the country get back to school after dropping out. The Graduation Alliance model has been adopted by more than 80 school districts across the United States, and it's growing fast. And that's been a benefit, not just to teenage parents, but to others for whom life circumstances have previously interfered with educational goals, including students who are sick, those who are caring for sick family members, those who must work to help support their families, and those who have been pushed out of school by gangs and bullies. In my view, no dropout prevention effort is complete unless it includes a dropout recovery strategy. And for that matter, I'd like to conclude by emphasizing that the American experience so far has been testament to the fact that there is no one best way to end the dropout epidemic. It has only been through a combination of strategies, including those I've spoken about today, that we have finally been able to make significant progress on this important issue. Now, there are many more strategies to discuss, but your time is very valuable. So I'd like to refer you to the draft report I provided to this conference's organizers on strategies that have been successful in impacting graduation rate improvements in the United States and opportunities to maintain momentum in the fight to end the dropout epidemic. I would also like to reiterate that I'm eager to continue to build an international relationship with those who are fighting the same battle all across the world. So please, stay in contact with me, and I'll be happy to promote what you're doing to give every student a chance to graduate. Thank you, and I wish you and your students the very best.